Welcome to Ministry Combos. This is Rebecca.
And this is Eric.
And today we are going to talk about to MDiv or not to MDiv.
That is the question. In fact, that's a question we get asked a lot.
It is. I think probably you more than me, but people have asked me about which masters, why that masters, and there's lots of different master's degrees out there.
There is, although according to the accreditation standards of the Association of Theological Schools, better known as ATS, there's actually only 3 different kinds of master's degrees, like 3 different classifications. Did you know that?
Nerd alert. But why don't you tell us what they are?
So one I can just kind of knock out real quick. It's one that's kind of a little bit lesser. You know, your average master's student, if you're looking to get a master's degree, you usually wouldn't look to get a Master of Theology right away. Really, the only one place that you do that is Dallas Theological Seminary. They don't have an MDiv. They have a Master of Theology. So a Master of Theology is a postgraduate degree. It's not a doctoral degree, but it's not a master's degree proper. Even though it says Master of Theology, it's a postgraduate degree. So it basically, it's kind of a hybrid. You have to have a Master of Divinity already, which requires at least 72 credit hours. And then you're qualified to enter a Master of Theology, better also known as the THM. That has a research component and it prepares you for PhD work. So that one is very unique. It's kind of a master's degree that's farther down the road a little bit. And the kind of questions that you and I get asked are, usually Bible college graduates, a lot of friends from West Coast, and even friends that we've networked with from other independent Baptist, Bible colleges. So some good guys and ladies. So they would not be really looking for a Master of Theology right away.
But there are all kinds of different ones. There's the MTS, there's the MRE, there's the MDiv, there's all sorts of things. I got a master's of counseling or a master's of whatever. There's a bajillion different titles, I guess, for those.
Yeah, there's a lot of different nomenclatures and titles for them, but even then, there's actually only 2 other different kinds of master's degrees aside from the THM. It is a Master of Arts or a Master of Divinity. So all of the other masters, doesn't matter what the title is, it's either classified according to the ATS accreditation standards as either a Master of Arts or a Master of Divinity. Let's start with the Master of Arts. The Master of Arts requires at least 36 credit hours, and it can have up to
66 or something like that, I think.
Really all the way up to 72, which is the minimum for MDiv that we'll get to. But the Master of Arts degree can be known as many different names. All right, it can be called a Master of Religious Education. It can be called a Master of Theological Studies, which is what you have.
Those are the ones we have.
Yeah. It can also be called a Master of Christian Studies. That's at Midwestern, I believe. Gateway called their 36 one Master of Theological Essentials. Right? It can be known as a lot. Now, even if you have a Master of Counseling from a Bible college or a seminary.
Luther Rice offers a Master of Counseling.
Correct. That is actually classified as a Master of Arts degree.
Okay.
So you may have, mine's a Master of Education in elementary. Well, yes, if that's from a Bible college or ATS or theological, that's classified as
an MA.
An MA, correct. In that classification, right? Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of different ways to kind of customize your master's degree under the MA. You can really look around and get different flavors, and you can kind of pick and choose to what likes. Like you were enrolled at the Luther Rice Master of Counseling for a little bit at least. Tell me, why did you enroll there?
Well, a lot of Master of Arts, whatever they may call it, at Bible colleges and seminaries, they do a lot of the same thing. And if you wanted to have any sort of a specialty, there's not that many classes. So when I was interested in getting a master's of counseling, I looked around to see, okay, which program is going to give me the most counseling classes? Because yes, I don't mind getting some systematic theology, some church history, some things like that. But my main goal was to study counseling. And a lot of them are just kind of your basics, higher level systematic theologies and church history, or Baptist history, or whichever kind of an institution you go to. And it's sort of, everybody takes kind of the same things, and you might have one or two classes. And I wanted a master's that really focused in on counseling.
Yeah, that's very common in a lot of master's degrees, is that you have a theology core, and then your concentration will be like, sometimes even 2 or 3 classes.
Not many.
No, it's really not many at all. So even though it'll say in the title, I have a Master of Arts in homiletics or a Master of Arts in counseling, well, the actual training that you get, depending on the program, might not be very extensive at all in that field, really, even though it's kind of attached to that. It may even be in the degree name. Yeah. So there's a broad range out there of Master of Arts.
Well, and when I finished my Master of Arts, I actually had transferred from Luther Rice through a variety of circumstances. I wasn't necessarily wanting to gear my education towards counseling anymore because my roles had changed as far as work and ministry and things like that. But I ended up finishing with a Master of Theological Studies. You finished with a Master of Religious Education, but then you went on to get the MDiv. So why don't we talk about that? Why did you get the MDiv, and how was that different, and was it better? Did you need it?
So the MDiv, also known as Master of Divinity, it's the only nomenclature that can be used for it. So if it's a Master of Divinity, it's a Master of Divinity. All right, it's an MDiv.
There's no other names for it.
Correct. Not according to ATS accreditation standards, at least. Okay. So, and what makes the MDiv unique from the Master of Arts is a couple of things. One, the minimum required amount of credit hours is 72 credit hours. Mm-hmm. So we're talking, that's a lot more work to be done. And the other one is it's what's called a professional degree. It doesn't necessarily qualify you because the authorities in the local church, but for lack of a better word, just humor me a little bit. It's kind of the gateway to pastoral ministry, or has been traditionally, at least. Has been traditionally. There's a big decline of MDiv students in seminaries, and more of them are kind of leaning towards the Master of Arts. And I think that may be correlated with the rise of Bible colleges, of undergraduate masters, which maybe we can come back to in a minute. But for the Master of Divinity, what it is, the Master of Divinity is intended for people that already have an undergraduate degree, that have already started their lives. They're already, in a career with a secular undergraduate working, and then God calls them to ministry midlife.
But they have no ministry training.
Yeah, or no theological education. Well, then you go to seminary, you get your Master of Divinity, because it's very wide range. You're going to take classes in a Master of Divinity. We're talking at least 72 credit hours. The one I took from Southwestern was 88 credit hours. So
I've seen them up to like 102 or something, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. They can be up there, and the reason why is it's there's categories. There's theological classes that you go to, systematic theologies, like you were saying. There's church history classes. There's usually a class on evangelism. There's a class on leadership. There's usually a class on missions. There's a lot of different classes. Some of them will require other classes, like maybe an education class or something along those lines. There's usually a teaching or preaching. Hermeneutics is a must. That's in there somewhere. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of a well-rounded, if nobody has any formal theological training at all, the MDiv is and has been traditionally across denominations the gold standard for pastoral ministry. at least, and I'm specifically speaking pastoral ministry, not necessarily theological education as a whole, but for people entering the ministry, it's the MDiv. And I think another thing that really stands out with the MDiv is it requires at least 6 credit hours, which is typically 2 classes of both Hebrew and Greek. So you have really a study in the original languages also. So we're talking something that's really broad range. Now, going back to that concentration thing you were talking about, you can do a Master of Divinity with a concentration in, like, I was super excited. When I went to Southwestern, I was like, man, I want to do that Master of Divinity with a concentration in preaching, until I realized, there's only, I think, 4 concentration classes.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I was pretty disappointed in that. I'm in this 88 credit hour program, and I'm going to be able to say and study preaching in depth. Hang on, you're telling me I'm taking 88 credit hours, but only 12 of which count for my concentration?
Yeah.
I was pretty kind of disappointed in that. Now, I loved a lot of the other classes, but what I'm trying to say is that the Master of Divinity, there's not a lot of room for customization. There's just not. If you want to get a Master of Divinity, don't expect to get a ton of classes in your preferred area of study. If you already have a Bible college degree, for example, and you already have ministry experience, and you already have even an area picked out that you want to study, you know what? The Master of Divinity might not be for you.
Yeah. So let's talk about that a little bit. I remember when we first moved to the campus of Southwestern, or to Fort Worth, I was super excited, and we're like, let's both do the MDiv. This will be great.
Yeah.
I even enrolled in a Hebrew class with you, and then you're like, what
that.
are we thinking? Don't do that. And so at first I felt like I downgraded to get the MTS, but then I realized as I was watching you walk through the MDiv that there was a lot of classes in there that you're like, it's good. It's not that you didn't get anything out of the class. It wasn't a complete waste of time and money. Not saying that, but you would have been okay serving in ministry without those specific classes. And for me, I really, really wanted to delve into ministry to women, and I was in the program, the MDiv, at first to do that. And I kind of got discouraged too, realizing, wow, there's very few classes for that. And you were starting to learn and discovering, because you were further down the road in your degree program, and you're like, hang on, wait a minute. You can get the MTS, then you could go on and do a Doctor of Ministry specifically geared towards what you want to study.
Yeah, I think that's big. But before we get there, I think you hit on something that I really want to speak to, and what that is you're exactly right. I love doing the MDiv. I don't regret doing the Master of Divinity program. I don't regret it a bit. And to be honest, I don't think anybody that does an MDiv is going to regret doing it. I mean, if you love the Lord and you love theology, you're still going to love your church history classes. You're going to,
Well, I had church history.
Well, yeah. Well, yeah. Okay, touche.
Yeah.
But some of the classes that are not in the smaller master's degrees, I still enjoyed my leadership class, for example. The God Who Goes Before You. I love that book. It's on Christ-centered followership, how we think of servant leadership as just servant leadership, when in reality, when Jesus called the disciples, he said, follow. Leaders are first followers, and just that's being smacked in the face. I mean, I still remember that.
Yeah.
And that was the crook of the whole book and the whole class, is that even Christian leaders are only leaders if so much as they are following Jesus. So I loved that class. And I liked a lot of the other classes, but I remember taking several classes and knowing what we got in our undergraduate degree at West Coast, which definitely, I think we're going to do another podcast. We have one lined up as things that, what were we gonna call it? Something along the lines
Kind of pros and cons, things that we had to unlearn, things that we had to
Yes.
learn, both from Bible college and seminary.
Yeah, things we had to unlearn, and maybe there wasn't a little bit of an echo chamber there.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we got a lot in that undergraduate. There were several classes in the MDiv where I was doing the Master of Divinity, the 88 credit hours, and I looked at you and I'm like, Rebecca, you don't need to take that class. The evangelism class, we've knocked on thousands of doors.
Yeah.
personal
Lots of
evangelism.
gospel
Yes,
conversations.
and one of the requirements for that evangelism class was you had to, go door knocking once. I remember Matt Elon talking about his class going, where they went door knocking, and for a lot of the people in the class, it was their first time ever, sharing the gospel with somebody in person, for starting a conversation with the express and intent purpose of sharing the gospel with them. So like they got a map and went out door knocking, and I remember that he was like, coming back, he was like, oh, this is going to be easy. I mean, we're used to doing that every single week. He was telling me that, like, when they met afterwards, that there was some people that were like, whoa, that was awesome. They were like, the thrill of it. And they were like, whoa, they're like, oh man, how many doors did you get? I had 2 doors and I didn't have anybody answer. I talked to somebody, but I didn't get to.
It was so hard.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And like everybody's got to start somewhere.
Yeah.
I'm not, I'm not knocking that at all. But at the same time, like, if you went to a Bible college,
That
yes,
emphasize that.
yeah, you can critique it all you want, but you probably still gain some training and some theology there.
Well, you came out with some ministry tools in your tool belt.
Yes.
Whereas if you went to a secular school and were studying engineering or finances or whatever, some of those might actually play a role in your ministry, depending on where God has you and what he has you doing. However, as far as theologically and practically, the nuts and bolts of how to do ministry, you're not going to have gotten that, most likely.
Yeah, I would agree completely. So the MDiv is not a one all do all for everybody. I think that's my opinion, at least. Would you say the same? What do you think?
I think so. And I think our opinion on that has shifted over time, just as I have walked through a different degree program and completed it, and you did the full degree program. And now that we are both doing the Doctor of Ministry and the things that we're learning there and how exciting that is, you inspired me. You're at the end of yours, and I'm just starting mine because I realized you finally got to really, really, really focus in on what you are the most passionate about. So I think it depends on your goal. What you feel like maybe you're lacking in. As you look at things, you could do a master's degree that specifically focuses on something. I mean, the counseling degree at Luther Rice was really good. I enjoyed the classes that I took there. And it really depends on your goals personally. But definitely MDiv doesn't have to be something for everybody.
Yeah, and I think that we've kind of skirted around it a little bit, but let me just go ahead and say this flat out, that now let's shift from master's degrees, and we've talked about it, but let's talk about specifically the Doctor of Ministry degree for real quick. If you're in ministry, you probably feel like there's an area that you're really, really called to. Like, man, I see a need in my church and in my community for counseling or for expository preaching or for,
Church revitalization.
Yes, or church planting or ministry to women or evangelism.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, if you have a Bible college degree and you really have an itch, a knack for a specific area that you really desire training in, the Master of Divinity is probably not going to scratch that.
It didn't for me.
No, it's
Well, I
probably
didn't do the Master of Divinity. I did a master's, but yeah.
Well, yeah, but here's the thing. My best classes in the Master of Divinity were already in your 36-hour Master of Theological Studies.
Yeah.
I mean, my most formative classes were the systematic theology is going at the next level, kind of getting a different take on a lot of those. Looking deeper into church history with the church history classes were so awesome, and maybe not just studying the landmarkist kind of point of view. So even doing a 36 credit hour master, you're going to be stretched. You're going to be, think critically. You're that's the jump from undergraduate to master's anyways, is thinking critically and learning how to think. I feel like that in undergraduate, specifically at least at our, type of Bible colleges that we went to. And like I said, man, there's a lot of good. There's a lot I'm thankful for.
Yes.
But, a lot of it was kind of information download. Here's what to think. But in the master's, it's here's how to think. And I can say that because I also have a master's degree from West Coast also. And I learned that from within. I saw the difference at West Coast between the undergraduate and the master's. But here's the thing. So I said all that to say this. Let me finally get to this real quick. Is A few years ago, the Association of Theological Schools changed their qualifications for admission into the Doctor of Ministry. And it used to be you needed a Master of Divinity or equivalent. But now all it says is you need a ministry related master's degree. So if you have a Bible college undergraduate and you feel like that you already really have your area of ministry really picked out, that you know you need advanced training in, you're probably not going to get it in the Master of Divinity. You may want to consider enrolling in a Master of Arts, 36, 42 credit, still pick your program to meet your goals. But after that, you can go directly into a Doctor of Ministry. And the great thing about the Doctor of Ministry is every single class in that degree program is in your specialization, if you choose. I mean, that is absolutely fantastic. It's honing your skills and studying and ministry training and preparation in whatever area you choose. You're not forced to take random classes because it fits into the degree program, like leadership or like this other stuff that in reality you may have already gotten in your undergraduate.
And shameless plug for New Orleans Baptist Theological Seminary. I don't know if this is the case everywhere with the Doctor of Ministry, but they tell you they want you to take the classes that look the most interesting, that would be the most beneficial to you. You take certain ones for your specialization, which you choose, and they're all excellent. But then you have others, and you can basically choose and craft your own program as far as like what's interesting and what would I like to learn more about.
Yeah, I started at Southwestern with my DMin and transferred to New Orleans, and I gotta say, I have nothing but good things to say about them both.
Yeah.
I do. They were both fantastic. I mean, looking back, I wouldn't do it any other way. I'm so glad I took the classes at Southwestern that I did, but I'm also so glad I took the classes at New Orleans, that I did. But we get asked this question a lot of, hey, I feel like I need, more education. Let's face it, it's a trend. It's a big trend right now.
It's a good trend.
Absolutely. And I want to encourage, any listeners out there, ask yourself, what is your goal? If you have a specific area of ministry that you feel like that you're called to enhance your ministry skill in and enhance your training in, yeah, you're still going to need to get a master's degree. But you may not need the biggest. Bigger's not always better. It depends on what your goal is. It may be better to get a smaller master's degree, a Master of Arts, instead of the MDiv. Let's face it, if you have Logos, you may not need to take the Hebrew. There's a lot of seminaries that have Hebrew and stuff on free on their website. Master Seminary is one of them. Many others also. You can pay for Bible Mesh. You can learn language. You can do that stuff. But if you have an area that you really feel called to, you can pursue that at the doctoral level. Now, here's another thing about the Doctor of Ministry, which is why I'm a believer in it. This is just practical. Listen, a lot of our listeners, particularly ones that we graduated Bible college with, they may not be raking in the finances for, in their jobs, in their ministry positions. It's a place of service. Just from a financial perspective, a Doctor of Ministry usually is around or under $10,000, maybe $12,000 for the entire 30 credit hour program. Okay, that's usually cheaper than even a Master of Arts. So compare that to doing 72 plus credit hours for a Master of Divinity. I mean, you're looking at more advanced training at the doctoral level. You're looking at the same theological master's degree base, plus more advanced training in your area of ministry. And it also qualifies you to teach in some institutions, should you ever get the opportunity. Now, it's not a PhD. We're going to do a separate podcast probably in the future to talk about the differences there, because there are differences, okay? But listen, I think that we have a lot of listeners that aren't really aware that it's a possibility for them.
I would add a couple things. Number one, branch out. if you have an undergrad from a Bible college or something and you want to start a master's degree, go to a different institution. And there's lots and lots of good ones. We'll probably do another podcast about that too, just talking about different resources, how they work, different seminaries and institutions and things like that. But branch out, learn from somebody new, hear something different. You will get the most out of your master's degree if you go somewhere else than where you did in undergrad. And then number 2, there is a difference between what you did in going from the MDiv to the Doctor of Ministry and what I did, the Master of Theological Studies, to the I think I just said MDiv. I meant the DMin. I have to take 2 extra seminars, kind of just proving that I can do the doctoral level. But that's the only thing, and that's actually kind of exciting to me because that gives me more classes that I can choose from and take.
Yeah, but
so you would have to do extra credits at the doctoral level, but again, that would be in a specialization of something that you wanted to do, and you would be shaving off, 50 credit hours or whatever it would be from a Master of Arts to the MDiv.
And you can focus those on what you want to study.
Yes.
Instead of, taking classes that maybe you let's face it, you would have already gotten.
Yeah.
You would have already gotten in your undergraduate. And it's more affordable. And it's at the doctoral level, not the master's level. How is this a bad plan? I just feel like that is it's a extremely viable opportunity for a lot of Bible college graduates out there. And maybe even our Bible college and master's degrees. Maybe there's some people out there that don't realize, man, I didn't realize I was qualified to enter a Doctor of Ministry program.
Yeah.
You are. If you have a Master of Arts in any shape, doesn't matter what it's called, you are qualified. And ministry experience and things like that.
Yes. Serving in ministry currently.
Correct.
Like that.
Correct. Things like that, yes. I mean, there's some other things, but the big, the big deal here is that you don't need a Master of Divinity in order to pursue a Doctor of Ministry. And that door is just wide open. It's wide open.
And I will say, too, education, all of it is a step of faith. And what we share about the education, none of it was, we just had all this excess cash sitting around, and so we decided to go back and get our education. Every single thing that we've done with furthering our education has been a step of faith. And I can attest, even just in this semester, that both times my bill was due, God provided from a way that we didn't expect. So it is an act of faith, and God will reward that if he calls you to do that.
It's an investment.
Yes.
Absolutely. It's an investment. It's an investment into yourself, not in a selfish way, but in a way that is a stewardship way. And it's an investment into your ministry also.
Well, to quote our next gen pastor, we were talking about our schooling the other day, and he said, I feel like it's really cool because you get this education to pour back into people. And really, you're doing it for other people, which is so true. I mean, that was the big motivator for me to continue my education is I want to give good quality stuff back to the people that God allows me to minister to.
Absolutely. If you have any questions on this or if you want to reach out, our email is in the notes of this. And thanks for joining us for this convo.
We'll see you next time.